welcome Dr. Doreen September. She's back with us, and we're thrilled to have her here. Thank you so much for giving us this hour.
It's always a pleasure.
It's our pleasure because, for those of you who don't know, Dr. September is a true expert in the field of autism. I believe the preeminent expert in our time, and this is the time for autism. There is no other time.
That's right.
And you've been working in this field for 30 plus years. I know we're encroaching on other numbers, which we don't even want to talk about. But you've been working in this field for a really long time and have worked with so many different individuals on the spectrum, from very small babies up through adults and even people who are senior citizens now on the autism spectrum. Because I know a lot of times people write in and go, are we just talking about kids? And I want to assure them that certainly you're not. And the people that you help, you are the founder of so many amazing things, but among them, the Center for Autism and Related Disorders.
Thank you very much.
And the impetus behind Autism Care and Treatment Today, a wonderful organization that gives grants to families for the things that they need. But you treat individuals who are on the autism spectrum, and yet with all of those things, plus the many other things that you do, you give us this hour to talk to parents and to individuals who are on the spectrum and teachers and other practitioners. We want everybody to be aware of the fact, though, small disclaimer, that there is no expert in this configuration who could give individual specific advice.
Absolutely.
But having said that, you get an opportunity to kind of, pose a question and get some ideas and support from, I believe, the most brilliant mind in this field and the person who is a visionary that I'm always struck on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, by how you. Sometimes I don't always know. You'll be doing something and I'll go, why is she doing that? And then it's all revealed to me.
Well, thank you very much.
No, thank you.
You embarrass me.
Well, I don't mean to embarrass you, but I want you to know how grateful I am and how grateful so many other people are.
Thank you so much.
And that what you do matters. And it has mattered to so many people. See, I'm going to get all emotional. But it does. And that on top of that you find the time to do this is a wonderful thing that I'm grateful for.
It's a pleasure. It really is. I read these, every time I come in on Wednesday and I just look at the questions that you printed out. And they're just, I just get sad, because
takes your breath away.
It really does. And it's not the time anymore where so many parents should need help and don't know how to get the help. It would be one thing if these questions were coming 30 years ago, but we shouldn't be in a place where so many families are left without help.
Yes, and can I just say this, and I don't want to get too soapboxy today, but I think a lot of families now, because of the way the system is, that more and more families have access to insurance. So families, used to be that your child be diagnosed and you go in and they go, okay, we're going to give you speech and OT. And you would think, wow, you're just going to give it to me?
Right.
That's the initial response. And then you would find out about ABA and what it was going to cost and how many hours, and it would be dizzying, right? But then you would hear more, and then you would see how much you'd have to work to get that. Well, now, what I'm hearing from a lot of families is you go in, they offer you the speech, the OT, and they go, oh, and we're going to give you ABA. And they go, ABA? And they say, yes, we're going to give you 15 hours of ABA, which seems shocking, but it's just given to them.
Right.
And parents don't know what a pivotal moment that is for them. That 15 isn't enough, that you feel like you should be grateful. They're giving us 15 hours, but what they've handed you is something that they know is less than.
Yeah, it's a painkiller. You know how this is one of the things about medications like Tylenol or Advil or painkillers. They just kill the pain for the time being.
It's not taking care of it.
They don't take care of the issue, right?
Right. And then parents don't know what their role is going to be.
Right.
And this is a really difficult thing because at that moment in time, and I remember when my son was diagnosed, you are so overwhelmed.
It's true.
And you don't know what your role is, and you don't know who to trust, and you don't know who to listen to. But I find that my heart jumps out of my body on a regular basis because parents don't know what their role is, and they don't know how important their role is.
Right.
And they don't know how hard they need to fight to get every hour, and how hard they need to fight everything, including their family and their own instincts, to make sure that their kid is available for every hour.
True. Right.
And that that's what keeps me awake at night now. How are we going to get to these parents and explain to them, you are at a moment like no other. You have the ability to help your child in ways that parents have prayed for and fought for you for decades now. Don't squander it. You still have to be the captain of your ship, and you have to be leading everybody, saying we have to get to the prescription, which is probably, it's different for every kid, but it's probably not 15 hours.
Right.
It's probably 35 or 40 hours.
Right.
And you're going to have to fight for that. The fight is not over.
That's right. And there's so many things, it interests me. It always amazes me because parents talk about, like, a parent might sometimes parents will be upset about very little things, like, I don't know, a session was canceled, or some therapist might have been late or something like that. Yet we found a very astonishing thing, which is kids are learning 100 times faster in the centers than they are at home. And then I have parents who really just refuse to do that. And I think it's a matter of everyone needs to do everything they possibly can when a child has a diagnosis of autism to help them in every possible way, whether it's the therapist, the supervisor, the parent, the funding source, everyone, because this is one of those things where if you put all in, you actually have a really good chance.
Yes.
And you're so right, Shannon. In the old days, I say old days, but it's true, parents used to value every hour of ABA much, much more. There would be no cancellations. There would be no, I'm going to basketball practice for my other son or whatever it is. None of that existed because this was more important than anything else.
Well, and you knew it because you had to fight for it so hard.
Right.
That's how you knew it. And I don't want to, it's not that I blame these parents, because I just think they just don't know.
Right.
They just don't know. And I feel like it's part of my job to make sure that they know.
Right.
But I want everybody to know that the world changed, and ABA looks different than it did a year ago.
So true.
And we all need to shift.
Yeah.
The thing we were saying 2 weeks ago about, your child was just diagnosed. Imagine that we're going to pick up your house and we're going to shake it and we're going to turn it on its side, and then we're going to reposition all the furniture.
Right.
Same thing.
It is, honestly.
ABA changed. So I know change is hard.
Right.
It's really, really hard, but we all need to take a breath, acknowledge that it's hard, and then keep going anyway.
Right.
That's sort of been my theme for the week. Yes, this is hard. Acknowledge that. Nobody's saying it's not hard. I really don't want to say to anybody, suck it up. That's not what I'm saying. Acknowledge that it's hard, but acknowledge that it's worth it, and then let's keep moving.
Right.
It's that Dory thing from Finding Nemo. Just keep swimming.
Absolutely.
Nobody said it wasn't hard. But anyway, there was my soapbox that I said I wasn't going to do that. I need to get to some of these questions really desperately. Okay, I'm going to start out. My son is avoiding therapy. I asked the supervisor why she thinks my son is avoiding, and she said sometimes kids just don't want to do it. I want my son's supervisor to give me a better explanation. To me, my son may be avoiding it because he's not having fun and not engaged in the activities. How do I know what the reason is for my son's avoidance? This is kind of common.
Yeah, of course. But it's actually a really simple answer to this question. And if you think about it, most of the time, any one of us will avoid many, many, many situations unless the punishment for avoiding is larger or the reinforcer for not avoiding is larger. So if you really think about it, how many kids wake up in the morning completely happy to go to school? Right. Most kids don't really want to go to school. They start wanting to go to school when they have a very amazing social group, when there's like a fun activity at school, when, I don't know, a million different things. But there's some huge reinforcer that suddenly appears, and then that takes over the negativity about going to school. How many of us wake up in the morning saying, yay, I get to go to work again?
Right.
So very few people have that. And it's mostly because most of the time people don't really enjoy going to work for 8 hours, but they do it because they need the reinforcer that comes at the end of the week or 2 weeks, which is their paycheck. That is the truth. I mean, if we were to do all the things that we just want to do, and if we could do all the things that we just want to do, not too many of us would go to school, not too many of us would go to work. It's really that simple. Why do we do those things? Because we've learned that the end result, the long-term reinforcer perhaps is more important, or it's expected, so kind of the embarrassment of not doing it is worse, letting down our parents is worse, failing amongst our friends is worse. There's some other aversive that keeps us going, and we don't want to face that. So we'd rather just keep doing what we're told to do. For your son who's avoiding therapy, it's really the same thing. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have therapists who are not fun. It could simply mean that your son prefers to watch TV, or prefers to sleep, or prefers to eat, or something that is more reinforcing. Now, therapy is not by nature intrinsically going to be the most fun or reinforcing activity. The reinforcers that we put into therapy and that we kind of, correlate to therapy are supposed to be there, are supposed to be fun and enjoyable and so on. So to some extent, it makes a tedious job a little bit more fun. Let's face it, therapy is a tedious activity that we have tried our best to make more rewarding. Its nature on its own is not to be fun because it's demanding, it's challenging, it challenges your child, it makes your child work, it makes your child learn. And the successful therapist and supervisor over the course of time will learn how to balance things so that it's not aversive, it's more fun than not. So really, that's what it is. If you look and see and think that your child is not being engaged, is bored, if therapy itself looks kind of like completely aversive to you in some ways, then just suggest that to the supervisor and the therapist and tell them, can we just make the balance of reinforcers a little bit higher, because I don't think it's not worthwhile, and sooner or later he's going to give up.
Yeah.
Now, it always has to be reinforcing enough to keep the child going.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that there are other activities that won't compete with it. There are always going to be other activities that are more fun.
Yeah, and I think too, because I'm on this kick about, let's make sure we give parents empower them to do. Sometimes we feel a little like left out, well, maybe they all need to make it reinforcing. But, if you go with that way of thinking forever, you're going to be very frustrated forever.
Right.
I look at school, and sometimes my son draws a teacher who's, the one that's got the PowerPoint, that's got the fireworks, and, the kids are exciting and they're playing music and they're, making the curriculum more fun. And then sometimes you get the teacher who's just teaching from the book and has worksheets. Right. And my kid still has to be able to perform for all of those things.
Right.
And I could go in and try to get that teacher to be exciting, but that's going to be exhausting and it's not really going to work. Right. So I make sure that I give him a reinforcer for that. Yeah. So if you've got one therapist who's not as exciting, and that's going to happen, make sure that you're doing something reinforcing before and after. And that I'm just thinking about on Saturday, I wanted to take my son to something and he did not want to go, because you know why? He wanted to be on the computer.
There you go.
And if I let him, he would be on his phone or on his computer like this for the rest of his life.
Right.
But I wanted to take him to something, and I knew that once he got there, he would find it reinforcing.
Exactly.
But in the car right over, his mouth was going like this about, why do you do this to me? And I was just letting it go by.
Right.
We got there, and it was a thing where he was going to get an opportunity to try welding. I thought his head was going to explode. He was so excited.
Oh my gosh.
And he was like, that was so neat. When can I do it again? Right? And if I had just listened to him, he didn't want to go.
Yeah.
He didn't. I mean, there's times I don't want to go. When it's we
Right.
go, oh, we have to go to a party.
Right.
I know a party's going to be fun, but like what I have to do to get ready to go to the party, I don't want.
And the drive
Right?
and all this. I
Oh,
might as well just stay here and
right,
do nothing.
right, right,
Yeah.
right. But then when I get there, I have a good time.
Absolutely.
Sometimes we as parents have to goose and grease and cajole and make sure the
Absolutely.
reinforcement is there and then
Absolutely.
anchor it. I
Right.
kept saying to my son, wasn't that fun?
That's
Didn't you have a
right.
great time? What did you love about it? Right? And see, you didn't want to go, but we went, and see what you would have missed if we didn't go.
Right. Right.
So
And-
take an active part in it is what I'm saying.
Yeah, take an active part and also teach him to self-regulate this, because that's another lesson. You know, a lot of times, like, I often try to make things a lot of fun for my kids, and then honestly I find when I'm not there, things start to fall apart because I haven't spent enough time teaching them to find the reinforcers themselves. I guess,
good point.
and yes, when they're children, we do need to give them all the add reinforcers and help balance their lives. But as they grow up, it becomes more important for them to realize that some days are just going to be harder than others.
Right.
And they have to get through it because there's not going to be any immediate reinforcers. It's going to be a long-term reinforcer.
Yes.
And learning to look for long-term reinforcers or learning to regulate yourself for long-term reinforcers is a huge tool in life.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, talk about anything you want to do. You know, you want to learn a new skill. You want to learn, I don't know, go to school. You want to lose weight. You want to quit a bad habit. All of those things depend on the long-term reinforcer.
Yes.
And if we can teach our kids to like kind of bear down and keep going, then it really does help them. I think in this particular case for this family, I think you just, as Shannon said, you just need to kind of make things a little bit more fun. Talk to the supervisor and therapist for sure, but just realize that therapy is not always going to be fun.
Yeah. It's the nature of it.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to move down a little bit. Hello,
Sure.
Shannon and Dr. Doreen. This is West Virginia mom again. Hi, West Virginia mom. Normally all my questions are about my daughter, but this one is about my son. He had a pretty significant speech delay, a severe reaction to a vaccination when he was 2 months old that caused inflammation of the lining of his brain. What are the chances of a second child having autism when your first child has already been diagnosed? He has severe sensory issues that make our day very hard. He currently receives OT, PT, speech, and sensory integration therapy weekly. He has therapists that are pushing me to get an assessment done on him. But his social skills and imaginative play are above where they should be for his age. And he can have excellent social skills. And can you have excellent social skills and still receive an autism diagnosis? And then because she was texting, it did a very funny word, but she wrote back to us and said this. What it's supposed to say is maybe I'm in denial. Instead, it said Majerski.
Okay.
Don't we love autocorrect? Maybe I'm in denial because I don't want to go through that again. Any insight I would appreciate. Thank you so much, and we love you, and we love you back.
Yes, absolutely. And, you know, unfortunately, the risk is higher when you've had one child. The second child has a higher risk. I don't know the exact risk. I think it would have to do with the rest of your family history as well, and kind of genetic composition on both sides. But having said that, you also have learned a lot. And so, for instance, you know, you will be very careful to delay vaccinations perhaps, or to split them up, or to remove other toxins from your child's environment. I was just, I don't know if you read the story, the publication that came out a couple of days ago that said by, I think it was 2024, if we continue, and it had to do with the GMA foods.
Right.
Genetically modified foods, and if we continue with the products that currently are put in our food for genetic modification, by 2024, 1 in 2 children will have autism. So that was pretty astounding number, because I had thought it was more. That same researcher had previously predicted one out of every 2 children, but in 2034. So it was like 10 years sooner. I mean, this is how bad our toxicity is. But having said that, I know that it's very hard to deal with all of these things. I really do recommend that you do an assessment. It's so helpful when you do an assessment. Sometimes we don't do the assessments because we're just afraid of the results, but it's so incredibly vital to do an assessment of your child, a full assessment, because I think it really helps. And here's what I would suggest. You're one of our regulars, so I really would suggest that you get on skills.
I think she's on skills.
And just do the complete skills assessment. It will give you, the answer is yes, you can have a very social child who still has some aspects of autism. We can also be socially inappropriate. Like, one of the ways that we're very social is, for instance, to go up and talk to everyone and chat with them and so on, which means that individual may not really have embarrassment, may not really have shyness, and all of those things are part of normal behavior. Being embarrassed and so on are just part of normal behavior. When you're missing that, when you share too much of yourself, that's also not appropriate socially. So it is really important that you do have a full assessment. If you have done skills, great. If you haven't, please do it, because you'll see the other areas you'll see strengths and weaknesses, and that's what it's all about. It's not really about across the board weakness. A lot of our kids have strengths in many areas, and it's important to note those as well. But all we're trying to do with therapy is to teach them how to bring those areas that are a little weak up to par so that they can survive and thrive in normal society. Now, that is one thing I wanted to tell you. And then the other thing is the other type of assessment, obviously, that you want to do because you're questioning the diagnosis, is to have like a diagnostic assessment done. And that would be, there's many different ones. I mean, if you want to do a real in-depth one, I suppose, the ADOS and ADIR. ADIR is more a parent interview. The ADOS is an actual test. That's kind of the gold standard with regards to diagnostics, but there's many others that are also questionnaire forms that you could do. And if you have never filled out or completed a Vineland for your child, I suggest you do that. The Vineland is an adaptive behavior scale. It's pretty helpful in identifying areas of strength and weakness. You can also do many other tests that will help you, but I think that it is important to look at those things. And, with all that said, the beauty of a new child, you shouldn't fear it. I know it's easy to say that, but please don't fear that. Like, as much as you fear, I wonder, do you spend time also thinking about how incredible it would be to have another child who would contribute to the family in millions of different ways, regardless of what might be their issues. Everybody has issues.
Absolutely.
But, of course it's scary. I understand that it's scary.
And about a word about denial, it's a part of this journey. And I think a lot of times we mistakenly think, well, if you have one child, then you shouldn't be in denial about the second child. I think it's actually I have many friends who are autism moms who ended up having their second child diagnosed. And what I know from all autism parents is like a math equation, is that somebody had an instinct at some point, and from that moment that they had an instinct that something was going on with their child to the moment where they started getting substantive help, that is multiplied times a number, and that's the exact amount of angst and guilt that you have about feeling like you let your child down, right? That's for all parents. But when you do that equation for a second child, it's like that times 10. And so I know it's hard, and I can connect you with some other moms who've been through this, but I can tell you that the longer you wait, and you may not get the diagnosis, right? This may all be for naught, but if you do get the diagnosis, the sooner you get it, the less that you're going to have guilt about having waited, and the better your child will do. For my friends that have the second child, if they caught it earlier and said, I know I'm in denial, but I'm going to go and get it anyway, those children did better faster.
Absolutely.
And the ones who waited, their guilt is so all-encompassing because those kids didn't do as well, and the question is there for them, is it because I waited? Don't do that to yourself. We'll hold your hand, go just get your question answered. I know it's hard, but that's another one of those things. Just keep swimming. It's hard. Do it anyway. We'll catch you. And I can hook you up with some moms who've been through it, because there is a different grieving process with the second.
Yes.
If that is what happens, but I know some great moms who can talk you through that. So keep us posted, but trust yourself. You're asking because you know you need to go get it, right? So I'm going to send you a hug, and you're going to go do the hard thing, and we're going to send you love, okay? And then you're going to let us know what happens.
And also, just, here's an anecdotal data point, but I will say that by far the vast majority of times when there's a second diagnosis, it's a much lighter diagnosis than the first. So go ahead and do it.
Yeah, get it done. All right, on that note, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to be back and talk about some difficult things when we have teens that have issues with body parts.
Oh, yeah.
And are overwhelmed by them. So stick with us. We're going to be back in just a moment after these messages. Parent to parent, sometimes our kids will engage in certain behaviors that really seem random to us. We have no idea why they're doing it. It's really important to remember that all behaviors happen for a reason. And in fact, challenging behaviors happen for 4 reasons more often than any other reasons. The 4 reasons are attention. A lot of times our kids do things to get attention, and remember, negative attention counts. Another reason why our kids do things is to escape someone or something. A third thing is to gain access to someone or something. And the 4th reason is because it just feels good. So the next time your child is engaging in a behavior that seems random or strange or totally from outer space, stop and ask yourself which one of these 4 things might be causing it. Is it attention? Might it be to escape something? Is it to gain access to someone or something? Or is it that it just feels good? Knowing why the behavior happens helps us to deal with it. What is this ABA treatment I keep hearing everyone talk about? Welcome back to Autism Live and to Ask Dr. Doreen. We're here with Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh, and she's answering your questions in real time. I'm going to move on to this kind of difficult question. In fact, the parent says, "Hi, I don't know how to word this. My son has autism and will be 13 in a few months. I'm teaching him to wash himself in the shower. He will not/cannot wash his privates, penis. He freaks out and has a nuclear meltdown. He doesn't like to touch it, look at it, etc. He also freaks out if his brother is changing in their room because he doesn't want to see his pee-pee. How do I begin to help him with this? And thank you."
Sure.
Difficult.
Yeah, it is. And this is something that at some point he has gotten uncomfortable with. It is definitely learned behavior, which means you can reverse it. But so, how to get him comfortable with, I guess, his brother changing or something else is I would probably just give him a set of rules that he could check off. For instance, these are the locations where it's okay to become naked. These are the people where it's okay to become naked in front of, to get naked in front of. Because I think he's overgeneralizing. Probably someone at some point tried to teach him safety maybe, and he's overgeneralizing it, thinking that it's like he's going to get hurt or something's going to happen, or at some point maybe somebody told him don't let someone else touch your privates, and now he thinks he himself can't touch his privates. He's mixing up the rules, and I think it would be important to clarify the rules and just say, so, these are 2 separate situations. One is in the shower and one is like just changing. And I think it should be okay, if his brother is changing in his room, obviously. And if that happens and he starts to comment about it, you just ignore the commenting. And in fact, have his brother do that change every single day, because he will get used to it. That's something that will just habituate. In other words, if nobody responds to it, gives it attention, and just acts like it's a normal thing where his brother's changing, he will habituate to that. Now, the shower is a different process. You should just do a shaping procedure there, where basically all you have to do is, now I don't know if he just freaks out about, let's assume he just freaks out about washing his privates. So what we want to do at this point is just have a shower where you don't even bring it up. That's your baseline, where he's just, washing himself and not necessarily anything about his privates. And then you will start with, let's say, washing the area around his privates, and that's all he has to do. And then you will gradually, the next shower, perhaps have him wash a small portion of the privates, or just begin and reinforce that. And then you will have him do a better job, and you can just gradually shape the behavior instead of like insisting that the whole thing be done. Now, I don't know if he will allow you to help him wash it. He's 13, and perhaps this is also something where it's a matter of privacy. And I don't know, sometimes our kids, we get to a point where it's actually easier if a male is trying to teach them. It's a lot easier if his dad could perhaps maybe show him in the shower, to be honest with you. If the dad could wash himself and he learns how to wash himself, that's probably a better way to do it. You can also get him a washcloth, which might help him with that. I'm trying to think of other things, but definitely don't make this into a battle, because to me it seems like he clearly is mistaking some rule that's been given to him. Otherwise, this is not a typical thing that would happen.
Okay. We've got so many questions coming in on the live feature, so I'm going to take some of these. Dear Shannon and Dr. Doreen, first of all, thank you for reaching thousands who are desperate like me through your show. After such a long fight with my insurance and lots of battles, my son just started 40 hours of center-based therapy just this week.
Wow, fantastic.
Yesterday was only his second. Yes, exactly. Yesterday was only his second day, but I never saw him this excited when picking him up from school. This tells me that he already loved the environment. I cannot wait to see the outcome once they start running programs. Question: my son is on a special diet. He eats very healthy now, but seems to get hungry every now and then, and sometimes he uses this as an escape during a session. Do you recommend to put him on a schedule while he is at the center, or give him food whenever he asks? Which approach would benefit him? Thank you. Thank you again for being a part of our journey in recovering our son. I love you both so much. And we've got people writing it, so I'm not sure which part was the next part of that. But in any case, congratulations, and we're so excited. This is a family that we've been aware of and we've gotten questions from before, and they have fought so hard
to get.
So hard, and gotten all the backup they needed to be able to not only...
Are they a card family?
They are now a card family.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yes.
We're so excited. I'm very excited. Like, you've done your part, we will do our part. You've done a fantastic job getting the funding and also bringing your child to the center. Now, I'm super excited for your child. I wish you were nearby and I could meet you, because this is a fantastic situation.
She is nearby. We'll make sure that this happens.
That's great. What I wanted to say is, no, I wouldn't allow your child just to ask for food. I think it's a good idea to put your child, especially if he's on a restricted diet of any type or a healthy diet, just put him on a schedule and make sure you provide plenty of those items to the team. In the beginning, they might need to use some food as a reinforcer, but in the long run, there are going to be many more social reinforcers, and food will just be being on a schedule is probably the best way to go.
Okay.
But how awesome. I'm
very awesome. I'm excited too. We get so entrenched sometimes in your stories and your battles, and I feel like this is family to me.
Yeah,
like I do with so many of you.
Which office or local area? Is it in the California area?
I don't know that I'm allowed to say, but I'll tell you during a break.
Okay.
So I'll share during a break. In any case, I want to go on to another question that we had from somebody about a 13-year-old again. Mm-hmm. They gave their name and their son's name. Recently, they have a 13-year-old, recently began an acting program with other kids and young adults with autism. He says it's the first time he has felt understood and accepted.
Wow.
He's in the 8th grade and always had an IEP with a mix of mainstream kids and cluster classes with kids having special needs. Question: despite this newfound balance, he has also become very unforgiving to himself with his mistakes, and has major episodes that he has threatened to permanently hurt himself. Can you recommend ideas in addition to therapy and love and support? What techniques can I try to build that forgiving energy within him. And I think this is a great, and pardon the typos, but I know it's hard sometimes on devices. But I think this is, self-esteem and being able to understand when you've made a mistake and understand how to forgive yourself. This is very common amongst our teenagers that are on the functionality end of things, where they've come aware,
right?
But that brings that, this is where I don't fit in. So I loved this question, because I think a lot of people will love hearing the answer to that.
So it's kind of funny. I'm going to give a very interesting, funny answer to this, because I remember when my children were young, I would often see this time, or I would, let's say not just this, but I would see them doing certain things, and I always tried to figure out what's the best way for me to teach them to kind of balance how they feel about themselves, whether it was not forgiving themselves, or it was acting too wild, or it was whatever it was. It was like they're not aware of themselves enough to balance it out. And how do I do that? So my kids make fun of it now, because they're all older and almost all adults. But so what I did, they were very young. We used to have this thing with the four of us, my kids and I, would spend about half an hour to an hour each night just sitting, and it was a funny name to our group, but anyway, we would sit and talk about things like this. And one of the things that we talked about was I started teaching them. They were pretty small, pretty young, so I think this is definitely doable with a 13-year-old. I mean, my kids were like, we're talking 5, 8, and 11 or something, And I would teach them essentially in child terms the breakdown of the personality according to Freud, which is essentially the id, ego, and superego. And I remember when I used to teach my kids, each of those had a name, and I would try to tell them these are the 3 people inside you. And it was like ego was Edward, and id was some Igor or some name that started with an I, and so on. And I would explain to them what each of these people's personalities are. And so I'll do that now.
Okay.
And so, the id, which you can give an I name to, is the wild you. It's the you that just wants to have fun. When you're little, it's the you that just runs around like crazy and has no attention to anything that's going on, breaks all the rules, completely just does whatever they want to do, has absolutely no understanding of what's going on. It's the you, it's the baby you, it's the free you, it's the you that is running around wild, having fun in the grass, and just not carefree you. Okay. Then there's the superego, which is some Sam or something. And the superego is a person who is, that Sam is a person who is very, very responsible and like completely aware of all the rules and never makes mistakes and has to be just always perfect and has to make sure that everybody around them is happy and like they pay attention to everything around them, and they're proper, and they study really hard, and they do everything by the book, and your conscience is what you're essentially defining. Now, Edward, who's the happy child, who's the one that's the most successful of the 3 inside you, is the one that has a little bit of each. Edward is the one that balances that sort of wild and crazy id and that sort of over-controlled superego. And that's how our ego is formed. Now, in Freud's terms, it's the newborn and the parent. So the superego is the rules given by the parent. When you have a child who's not forgiving themselves, that's too much of the superego. That's too much what we call in behavior analysis rule-governed behavior. That means they're just, and if you can get your child to imagine the 3 versions of himself who are inside him, and you can just say, your Sam is getting really big right now, and it's time to let your Igor get a little bit bigger. It's time for you to push Sam down a little bit and let Igor get a little bit bigger. And so how do you do that right now? You're being kind of mean to yourself. How do you do that how do you allow the id to become a little bit wild, like appreciate yourself, like, well, how can you be a little bit more carefree and fun? And start teaching your child in every situation, where are you right now? You know, where are you with everything that's going on? I'll give an example. Like my oldest daughter, Nikki, she's got a very strong superego. And usually the older child actually does, always the older child, because we put, no matter how hard you try, the older child always becomes somewhat of a parent to the other children. And as a result, that superego increases pretty significantly, because you tell them, go watch your siblings, go hold her hand, you know, go bring her some water, whatever it is, you're putting them in the role of the rule setter. You're putting them in the role of the adult. And for her whole life, and to this day still, I encourage, whenever she does anything crazy, wild, happy, whenever she forgives herself, whenever she is like a childlike, I will always encourage that, because she needs more balance on that. And you have to identify that in your child, and the best way for them to help that is to appreciate those three people that are inside, and to always like visualize that. For our kids, it's really important for them to think like, okay, there's this part of me that I'm not loving, and I need to learn to hold myself, to love myself, to give to myself. And I think that's a really good way to teach your child to be more forgiving. And if you can get them to actually visualize these three parts of themselves that they're responsible for taking care of, all three, then they'll learn that balancing act a little bit better.
It's so fascinating because have you seen the movie Inside Out?
Yeah.
Because there's an element to that, but there's five people in there. And that might be the entree into the conversation about, let's talk about the people in your head and what they're doing. And I will say, because your child is into theater,
that's the best part.
This is the best thing for it. And especially if you can get him in an improv class, because, you know, that's my background. That's what my master's degree is in theater. And I, you know, for years taught college and taught comic improv. And comic improv is one of the best things for our kids, because it teaches you to react in the moment, and it teaches you that mistakes are the things you capitalize on.
Absolutely.
Those are the things that become funny.
That's fantastic.
And when a mistake happens on stage, like when it's trained improv actors, they pounce on it because it's gold.
Absolutely.
And then he will learn to be like, oh, that's the most exciting thing that there is when a mistake happens. It's an opportunity. And that's really what all of improv teaches, that an offer gets made, and do you take it?
That's so fantastic.
So,
that's
you know, if he's loving the theater, get him in the improv, and all of that will become totally clear. All right.
And also, if he's in theater, you know, all of these things that I just talked about are characters. Have him play those characters. When he's mean to him, when he's upset about himself, ask him, which character are you right now? Are you the angry one? Do you think you need to be the happy one a little bit more? You know?
Where's joy?
Where's joy?
Where's joy? Okay, I want to get to this question because it's from our Florida contingent.
Okay.
So, dear Shannon and Dr. Doreen, with 2 exclamation points, Florida contingent here. It's been a long time. I've been so busy trying to recover, and she says her child's name. She's coming a long way. Amazing people with her hard work and progress. Now in the 4th grade, talking so much more, asking all kinds of questions, socializing, loves kids, and plays with them for the first time in years. I see her truly having fun with interacting, and not just because she knows we're taking score. Sometimes she has anxiety meltdowns, but she has learned to self-regulate and goes to a quiet place to do deep breaths, and she knows when she's ready, and even talks about how she felt and why. I'm 54 and I'm working on that. So there we go. Sometimes she catches herself before she has anxiety issues. I'm going to take a class with her. Amazing praise. You and heaven for all that. I know she wants to talk more fluently as she gets stumbled over words and using question intonation and staring at me for cues and help developing the real question when she reformulates the statement. Due to her hyperlexic abilities, which help with language acquisition, she is now able to use target words using a whiteboard and then fading, erasing, then taken to NET. And that's how her vocabulary is extending.
Fantastic.
Skills-wise, she is working on the main idea, retelling, rephrasing, fact, opinion, explain to me, how do you know, sorts of lessons, and of course, keep adding words to daily conversations. With this said, Catching up on background info for you, although her cognitive ability to figure out what's going on in the environment and her lack of deep perspective taking, she just turned 9, knowing that she basically just learned to speak 3 years ago and had been doing intensive treatment hours all day long with therapist after therapist, I didn't think of how this would affect her self-perception. Because she is attention seeking by nature, she was always on attention contingency and is being mainstream. Problem is, she notices when she is not and talks about things like, I was bad at science, I disturbed my friends because I like singing and could be quiet. Or when she doesn't get what she wants, she's having a hard time keeping up with all the numerous demands. I'm still making it up to her, but the price takes sometimes forever. She punishes herself saying, now I lost my chance to get X because I didn't listen, and goes to a quiet area when she has done something wrong. It breaks my heart. She's realizing this stuff, and I wanted to take your opinion on how to handle this so that she feels is still okay and we all love and accept her as she is infinitely. And that we've changed and called all of the team involved to only talk positively to her and to be aware of comments like this. Sorry for such a long message. And as always, I love you and infinitely thank you for your presence on this earth.
That's awesome.
Isn't it?
It's so great to hear from
So
you.
many
and
great
it's so
things.
wonderful to hear all these fantastic things she's doing.
Yes.
The answer I gave to the previous person really works here. It really does. Like, what I would suggest you do is, especially because she's so hyperlexic, I would have her, whenever she says these things, and don't change your program around significantly. Things are fine. You don't need to modify programming. You know, they don't need to be all positive. Obviously, it's nice for them to be positive, but I think it's a matter of awareness right now, and it goes back to teaching her the 3 sides of her and teaching her to balance and to make sure she's had enough love and enough discipline herself. And have her write down the things she says. So every day when she says, like, I failed miserably at something, have her write down. So 1, I didn't do this at school today, so I failed. Okay. And then have her make that list. At the end of the day, have her put that list in front of her, and for every bad thing she wrote about herself, make her write a good thing. Just every time. So if there's 6, then she has to write 6 positive things. I did this today. I did this today. And then she has to look at both of those and give herself a reward according to that and say, okay, it wasn't that bad. I actually did a lot of good things. She can always do more than the bad things. She can also list those. And then ask her if she feels better about it and all that. Start having her learn to get into the habit of looking at both sides of who she is. Anything bad she's done, that's fine. You've done nothing bad, but what are the good things you've done? And if you've done enough good things, then do you really deserve to go in the corner, or do you deserve to just be okay? And teach her to just be okay that way. And that's fantastic stuff. And she's working on a lot of cool stuff. And, you know, as time goes on, this kind of stuff will get easier, I promise you. But don't worry, a lot of our kids go through this phase, and it's fine. It's part of awareness. And yeah, make sure she learns also to reward herself. And that's it.
Absolutely. And
good job. You've come
honestly,
a long way. My gosh,
I think
I'm
these
so proud of
are
you.
all good signs. And I just want to say that Jem went through this phase too, about that same age.
Yeah.
And he's come out of it the other side.
Yeah, and by the way, like this other parent, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Shannon, but find something that she enjoys inherently, like this, drama thing for this parent. She might be into drama, music, painting, whatever it is, but a lot of times, just as a health, just for survival, any of us, if you have a hobby or something that you really enjoy, that just changes everything for you. You can tolerate a lot more.
And she sings, and this whole family
There you
sings.
go. There you go.
I mean, you know, I have seen the videos of all of you singing. They are
amazing.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
I'm like, you know, you need to get a bus and go on the road.
That's fantastic.
Kind of thing. But kudos to you. Okay, I'm gonna switch gears though, because we're running out of time. Hello, Shannon and Dr. Doreen. Always loving your show. You both make my day. I'm responding to a question I sent via email on September 7th show in regard to challenging behaviors. My son is 6 years old and goes to first grade. His level is considered high functioning due to the fact that he has better language now, even though many times he is not understood and has other delays. In regard of ABA, I did listen to the wrong people. I was advised by his old teacher that ABA was not for him due to that he didn't need it, didn't need to be sitting and to be handed snacks. I did explain that that's not how ABA works. I guess I waited for a miracle change. I have called CARD for 3 years and they don't take my insurance. Now I just found out that my insurance, Medicaid, so far don't pay for in-home ABA, and I'm in New York, which I couldn't believe, but I'm still working to see if they have exceptions. Finally, one-on-one was recommended. It will take a while since the district will evaluate him again to qualify for that service, and thanks so much for all the advice.
Yeah, so I don't know what insurance you would have in New York that we wouldn't take, because if your insurance covers it, we take it. It doesn't matter what it is.
It might be that it's self-funded. That's such a dicey thing for us as parents to understand, is that your insurance doesn't cover it is different than CARD doesn't take it.
Exactly, yes. Of course, if there is any kind of coverage, we will take it. Now, Medicaid in New York, it's passed, but it hasn't rolled out. And that's the problem, and we're expecting it to roll out in New York, hopefully by 2017.
But I want to point out that it's exciting that you're getting a one-on-one, and
School
and
funding,
that there's
yes.
this issue about coming to the home. This is what I talked about at the start of the show, that for so long we had one idea with autism, which was that you got to have it in the home,
right?
And that all changed earlier this year. What you need to be fighting for is for your kid to be able to go to the center.
Right.
That's what you need to be. That's what everybody needs to get on board.
Yes.
We need to all shift the brain a little bit. We now know center is better. And somebody did write in.
It does take a while in New York, unfortunately.
But somebody had written in and said, I wish my son was at the center for 40 hours a week, learning 100% faster, question mark, question mark, question mark. I love hearing this.
Yes.
So we're going to just drill down on that and let you all, we're going to keep saying that.
100%
faster at the center. That is now best practice.
It's published. That's
Get
right.
it done.
That's right.
Fight for the center.
That's right. And also for this family, while you're fighting to get these services, if you have any ability or any free time at all, I really recommend that you start training yourself on some of the techniques. It's very calming, actually, and it's not a huge demand on your time. If you can go on the Institute for Behavioral Training, IBT, and just start by the smallest module, 20-30 minutes in the evening. Just listen to the modules, learn from the modules. It'll change your world when you learn the actual, underlying theories of ABA. It helps so much to understand how all of it works together. And then when your child starts therapy, you'll know when they're doing something right, wrong. You'll know exactly what to do. You'll know how to support it. You'll know how to be more engaged. It'll just be much better for you.
Yeah, my favorite one to recommend, do the one on compliance. Like your whole world will
change.
Oh man, rock.
Yeah.
All right, we're out of time, but I just adore
you. So
you.
much.
Thank you so
Shannon.
much. You're the best.
Lots of fun.
And thank you all of you for writing in those wonderful questions.